we can start. So I'm very happy to welcome Anke Schneider here. Anke is a chemist. She did her PhD at the university in Freiberg on Zinnwaldit and how to extract lithium from it. And today she can definitely explain much more. And today she will be talking about lithium recycling and whether it is possible to use the lithium which is already like in the system to meet the demands of the current situation. And as you mentioned, you also have experience from South America and lithium mining in China. So you can definitely say a few words about it as well, if it's fine. And
okay,
thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for introduction and for inviting me. It's. I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous because I'm not used to talk to this kind of audience. As already told you, I studied applied natural science in Freiberg, and I came into the chemistry department and did my PhD on lithium extraction from Zinnwaldite. So the local mineral. Of course, it's not just local in Zinnwald; it's also somewhere on other places around the world. And it was a project where we were looking at synergies of production from primary resources, so from hard rock or salt lakes, and also secondary resources from the recycling part of view. And lithium recycling is a big issue I'm working on today as well. I'm a hydrometallurgist meanwhile, which means I'm working on the process development on to optimize processes or to develop processes to extract the technology metals mainly from primary resources, so again ores, but also a lot of secondary resources. So and lithium recycling is a big issue at the moment. I'm working at the moment at 3 or 4 projects with this topic. And so I also thought this is really a good opportunity for me to catch up with the up-to-date problems in this and to have a look at it from maybe a more outer view. So I'm actually probably not very neutral on that topic, as you can imagine, but I try to do that. And in the end, I'm a scientist, and I also try to show you references which are, from my point of view, good references either from science or from the local governments, so with data which is not coming from the lobby, let's say. I tried at least. To start with, I just want to show you, it's not a good contrast, but maybe it will work. I would like to show you my outline. First of all, we are looking at lithium. I think you're quite familiar with this topic already, so I just wanted to show you why lithium is a critical raw material. What is the definition of it, and what are the reserves, where is it used, and how much actually do we need? I think we can only answer whether we can supply our demand by recycling if we know what we need in the future. So this is one of the topics, and then we go in a little more detail into lithium battery recycling technologies. What are the challenges there? What is the state of the art at the moment? Of course, I have a more local view from the German side, but I try to give an overview on the European developments. And that's also the last point, so the Green Deal from Ursula von der Leyen. What does it make with the battery recycling? What is the policy doing for that? And what are the trends in the future? So the last point is the future perspective of it. And I try to put together some information I found, what the industry is going for, and what are the regulations, and maybe what are the sites we are going for. So if we talk about the resources, there are always 2 words we discuss, especially in the mining industry, and this is resource and reserve. And I just put down the difference between the 2 words. Resource is actually everything we have on our planet. So if we think of lithium, we have different resources. We have brines, we have hard rock and clay minerals and so on. But these are the resources. And if we talk about reserves, then this is the kind of the subgroup of resources that had been discovered already. So we know how much it is, we know the size, and what is, I think, the most important thing is that it can be extracted as a profit. So a reserve is something a company is already had looked on to extract it. So if you thinking about the companies here mining the Zinnwaldite, then they actually talk about the reserve because they probably know already what they have in underground and they know the numbers of it and if they can mine it on a profit. And lithium, as I said, we have the resources of brine. So these are salt lakes, basically in South America and China, some in the US as well. And we do have some brines in Europe as well. They are not salt lakes or salt flats, but they are hydrothermal brines from the underground, which are also pumped up, for example, if we do oil extraction or gas extraction. So then we have some lithium-containing brines there, and there are also projects looking at these resources as well. And hard rock is the most classical one. Hard rock is spodumene, a mineral which is primarily mined in Australia. Then we have this kind of minerals, micas, which are here, Zinnwaldite and others, and clay minerals, which are really what you would expect of clay, so they are very ductile. And from these minerals you can get lithium out very easily. So these are the resources we are talking about. And if we look at the reserves, then this is the graph. It's from the, so I always try to put down the references I used to generate the charts so you can have a look at this data as well. It's open source. It's from the US Geological Survey. And they have, it's more like statistics on all the reference we have. And here we see the reserves of the world of lithium. So don't distinguish between the two different types. And the biggest reserve at the moment is in Chile. So they know obviously the salt lakes and they know the concentrations in there and they can determine the reserves quite well. The other one is Australia, which is known for lithium mining, and it's they have hard rock reserves. And then we have some other countries, Brazil, Argentina, the US, they are mainly using brines. US also hard rock. Canada is using hard rocks. China has both. They are looking at their salt lakes, but they also have hard rock. And then if we look at this cake here, other countries, this is probably Europe. And of course some other countries in Africa and so on. So this is a portion which is not defined here, but it's not that big portion if you look at the whole reserves in the world. So if we talk about the reserves, then we also have to have a look where it is mined or extracted. This is data which is very up to date. It's published this year by the EU, the Critical Raw Material Study from the EU. And so this is the global supply from the extraction stage, meaning the countries which do mining on lithium. And here you see Australia is the biggest player in this game. And this is what I told you, they have hard rock lithium and they mined it already for years. So this is the biggest global share on that. Then we have Chile, which is brine resources and yeah, very common. We have Argentina as well, and they are just focusing on their salt lakes now. So probably this share will be much bigger in the next years. And we have a smaller share on China. So they are also extracting the lithium. However, their deposits are not that good. So it's just a smaller share on that. And some other countries again. But you see here, there is not one country in Europe. So we don't extract lithium at the moment in an industrial scale in Europe. So, and as I said, this data is from this year, beginning of this year. It's pretty up to date. And if we have a look on the processing side, then it's getting even worse. So you see the more diverse cake is just getting into a cake with 4 pieces. So only 4 countries are actually involved in the processing of the minerals or the brines to produce lithium raw materials for the industry. And now which relatives have changed a lot, because now the 10% share of China is increasingly high. So we are mainly depending on China on the processing side. So Australia actually is not in that chart. Australia is the biggest supplier for raw material, however they don't process raw material, which means they are selling their stuff to China and China is processing it and we have to buy it from China. Argentina and Chile are involved in the processing, so they do it on their own. They have a local processing industry on site, and that's actually just because of the brine characteristics. It's much easier to process it there than shipping cubic meters of brine somewhere around the globe. And the US is always involved, you will see that. So they have actually quite good reserves. They know them, but they don't touch them as long as it's not needed. So I think they are able to scale up easily. Obviously not as big as China or something. But so they are always involved, they keep up with the technologies, but they don't touch their reserves if it's not needed. But I think this is just to give you an overview where the lithium industry actually is and where it works. And then, of course, the last question is, where do we need the lithium in the end? And this is a chart, okay, can't read it probably, but it's also from the US Geological Survey from 2018. That's the last update on that. I hope they will give a new update this year or maybe next year on that chart. But you see the biggest portion, it's 64%. Is going into the battery industry already. When I started my PhD in 2011, this share was about 20%. So it's increasingly dramatically. During that time when I was starting, the ceramic and glass industry was the biggest consumer of lithium. And this is something most people don't know. Lithium is used in glass because it prevents the thermal expansion of glass. So if you think of your cooking place, you have this glass top inside, and there's quite a lot of lithium inside, because otherwise it will, every time you have a local heat on it, it will get crushed. So glass industry and ceramic industry is a big industry, and the other one is lubricants and grease. So lithium is contained into fats and stuff like this for the industry. And of course some other uses. So you see, of course, batteries have the biggest share, but there's other demand on it. And this demand is so diverse and can't be recycled. So we're just talking about recycling on this portion, just to keep it in mind. So yeah, cars, the biggest thing. I found another chart which is actually summarizing the things I just showed you, but from a different point of view. It's unfortunate also from 2018, and it's a material flow analysis of the global lithium from the extraction stage here to the batteries on the other end. And you see very nicely where the lithium goes to. And yeah, at the beginning we have the two extraction things, so the two resources, brines and hard rock. We do have a lot of mine tailings, which is not just from the mining of lithium, but it's the mining of other metals where lithium is contained, and we don't use it. So this is a big issue which needs to be addressed. Then we have a processing stage, and there most of the brine lithium is going into the lithium carbonate production for battery grade, and most of the hard rock lithium is going to the other production stages, because it's much easier if you don't have to purify it up to battery grade. So if you go to battery grade, then you prefer brines from South America or China. And then we have here the manufacturing stage, and this is what I said. We have a battery grade flow and the other compounds going into glass, ceramics and so on. And you see on the share, this is the status of the previous cake. So it's about 60% going into batteries and the rest into the other flows. During the processing, the losses are not so high, so this is already optimized. The biggest losses are in the mining. And then we go into the battery, and they look just at two different types of batteries. That's why it's now a bit smaller here. But I think it's quite interesting to see that most of the battery manufacturers are producing for automotive. And that's why you also talked about cars, if you talk about lithium. And yeah, of course, electronics and so on. So I think this gives a nice overview, not just from the country side, but also from the resource side and where the resources go to into the industry. And yeah, if we talk about our demand, as I said, it's data from 2018. We need to also look at the future. What will the future bring? And so I also looked in the forecasters. And for lithium, it's really hard actually to find a good forecast, let's say, because most of them look at the price. And lithium is a critical raw material or is a technology metal, which means the price is determined by the stock market. So you will sell or you buy lithium on a stock market, and this is very volatile, and there's a lot of speculation in it, so it doesn't really represent the demand or the need of lithium. So it's much easier to look at the demand of lithium if you look at the different applications. And this is a chart, it's not so nice, it's from the International Energy Agency. And here you can see the kilotons of lithium per year which are needed for the electric vehicles, for the other industries, and for this lighter one is the grid energy storage, so the storage of renewable energies or that kind of stuff. So if you look at this, we are now here somewhere, so the share between vehicles and the others is quite the same. But if we just look about 2 years ahead, then we see the share for electric vehicles is increasingly high. It's more than double. And then the next 5 year steps, it's still increasing a lot. So, and then about, they say about somewhere 2040 to 2045, we have a peak. And after that, the demand it's tripping a little bit, let's say. I would say it's probably equilibrating. So that the demand and what we are producing is somewhere in the range that it fits. And I think from this, at this stage, then we can talk about 100% recycling. But until we have an increasing demand, of course, we can't catch up with this demand if we recycle this portion. That's, I think, quite clear. Yeah, and then again, another chart, again on the countries. And this is not just looking at the different commodities, but also on the cell manufacturing. So what they call it, the data is in gigawatt hours of cells produced, battery cells produced. And we see in 2021 where they had 586 gigawatt hours. And in the next 2 years, they scale up to 2,538 gigawatt hours, so 4 times what we had 4 years ago. And if you have a look at the share and the market share of that, that's also quite interesting. So, of course, 2 years ago, we had this share of China, which was really high. We had a very small share on Europe for battery production. The US, as I said, they are always involved. And some Asian, so Korea and Japan, which are heavily involved in battery production. So Samsung and Mitsubishi, and these are big companies which are involved in battery production, and some others. And if we look 2 years ahead now, this changes at least a little bit. So the portion of China is decreasing, even though the capacity which is built is increasing. And what I think is really nice to see is that Europe becomes or gets a bigger share on it. So which means that Europe is catching up and tries to produce batteries here. And have a domestic supply, let's say, on batteries. But if we have a domestic supply of batteries, we actually also need a domestic supply of battery material. Otherwise, we would always depend on China. And they can determine prices, and they can also say, okay, we don't sell it to you. So this is the political side of it, and this is why lithium was categorized as critical raw material. And this is the very known chart, I think, for critical raw materials. The EU determined already in 2020 and in this year again. And they were looking at, on the one hand, on the economic importance. And you see, we hope to have an increase in electrification of our automotive industry. So it is quite important for the EU. And then the other axis is the supply risk. And as you see, or as you saw already in the charts, we don't have a domestic supply, so the risk on supply is quite high. So just giving what these two words means. But this is something you can just easily download on the side of the website of the EU and have a look in more detail. You see there are, of course, different other elements and critical raw materials there. They had a look at about, I think, a total of 70 different materials. And of course, most of the materials you see here are also battery relevant. So we have cobalt, we have graphite, we have all the other manganese, and they are all critical to the battery industry. They are critical for battery recycling as well. And I think this is now where we hand over to the battery recycling thing. So first of all, we have lithium in our batteries because the batteries get a very high energy density and a low self-discharge. You probably also know 20 years ago you have to charge your phone very often, and the batteries just was able to stay up to date like 2 years or something, then you had to change it. Now it changed quite a lot, and this is because the technology has changed behind it. So we have lithium-ion batteries which have a good quality or supply good quality for energy storage. And if we think about lithium recycling, we actually only talk about lithium-ion battery recycling, and which means these are the rechargeable batteries. Especially in the German terminology, this is confusing because we call batteries the one which are not rechargeable, and the rechargeable ones accumulators. So maybe, I'm not sure if the Czech version is similar, but this was at the beginning quite an issue for me to understand this. So, but we always talk now about the rechargeable batteries, which are used especially in the automotive industry. So, if we talk about recycling, we are not just talking about technologies behind it, but we also have different constraints which needs to be fulfilled to be able to recycle batteries. And I just put some of them in here. And the first one, I think you are now doing that already, is education and awareness. So everyone needs to be aware that we need to recycle, and customers needs to be, or consumers in general, needs to be encouraged to recycle. And also businesses, and their policy comes into the play. Of course, economy would never recycle if it's not needed in general, let's say. The most important thing, of course, to recycle is that we have a battery feed. That means we need a battery collection system. And this is something I experienced during my PhD, which was not established at all. So we really had to hand sort batteries from the collection side to find some lithium-ion batteries to test with. It's getting better, but this is a big issue because it needs to have very local collecting points, and everything needs to be installed on that. And as I said, sorting is a big issue. You have to separate between different types of batteries. So not even inside the group of lithium-ion batteries, we have different types which has different demands on recycling. So this is a big issue and which needs to be automated more and more to be able to ensure a high efficiency. And then, of course, transport is the next thing, because if you have a widespread network, then you need to supply the batteries to the recycling facilities. Transport is, or infrastructure in general, I think is the most critical issue in raw material supply. And in accordance with transport, we have safety measures. Lithium-ion batteries are somehow hazardous, especially if they are end of life or have some damage on it. We just saw that in the North Sea with this tanker, this boat where some cars catch fire on that because of the batteries probably got too hot and stuff like this. So safety measures, especially in the transport as well, are very are needed to prevent accident and also exposure to hazardous materials. And last but not least, of course, we need the appropriate recycling technology to adapt the technology to the changing battery types which occur. And if we think about battery types, I just skip over this really fast because I think I'm a bit behind time. But you always have an anode, you have a separator, you have a cathode. And the battery types are defined by the cathode material, actually. So the anode is more or less the same. It's graphite and the lithium is inside. The cathode material changed over time significantly, and you can see it in this chart. So when I was starting, we actually had mainly lithium cobalt oxide. And at first, the industry tried to get rid of cobalt because this is even more critical than lithium. Cobalt is mined in Africa and the supply is very poor. So the next step was the lithium iron phosphate battery, which is a battery which at the moment is discussed quite a lot. So the chart on this one is probably not completely correct because it's from 2020. And meanwhile, Tesla decided to go on this type of battery. So probably the portion in the market is a bit higher than in this forecast. The next step to get rid of the cobalt, or at least a little bit, they had lithium manganese oxide, lithium nickel cobalt alumina oxide, and which is the main dominant battery type nowadays is this lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide. And you see it's getting more and more complex because you want to optimize your battery technology. And if you have a look at this, there are 4 different types of this kind of mixture of oxides, and we're trying, or the industry tries on the one hand to optimize their batteries and on the other hand to get rid of cobalt and lithium because they are expensive and they have a very high supply risk. So that's basically the trends in the battery technology. And yes, now we're coming to recycling. So you know this path already: mining, extracting, producing. And then we have the use of a battery. So the cars, the vehicles, automotives, in general, technologies are using the batteries. And especially for automotive industry, the end of life of a battery is defined by about 80% of its charge. So no one wants to get stuck with its car on a motorway because the battery is not working anymore. So this is the definition for that. And after that, we have 3 options. The worst option, of course, is the landfill for the battery. I think a quite good option is the second life for energy storage, because it's still enough for energy storage. You don't need to have that performance for if you want to store wind energy or something. And of course, the other part is the recycling technology. And if we talk about recycling, we have mainly 3 different ways of recycling these batteries. The first is the direct recycling. The second one is the hydrometallurgical process. And then the third one is the pyrometallurgical process. And we are looking into this process now in more detail. I just put 2 references which are quite up to date on this topic here. So there are a lot of more references, so it was not really easy to distinguish what information I took from these ones. But I think I mainly used these tools to put this together. Of course, it's also quite it's a topic I'm involved with, so it's also what we do. To recycle batteries, you first of all have to sort, discharge, and disassembly. This is shown on this photo, and actually it is still done by hand. So even in Germany, where the personnel costs are quite high. So, and then we have these three different ways, and we now start to look at them in more detail. Direct recycling. If we start with direct recycling, we need to disassemble and separate the materials very clean and very sophisticated. So this is a very, very important part for direct recycling. Then we get a pure electrode material, so in best case, a pure powder of a cathode material. After we have this, then it's quite easy actually. We just add some lithium salt to it, we put it in an oven, and afterwards we have a recycled material. So this is actually, as I said, it's quite easy. However, this part is very challenging. So in general, with this direct recycling, the structure and the characteristics of a material stays intact, and you just regenerate the lithium content of it. It has a maximum recyclability of material, so it's great. It can be applied to every type of battery. However, as I said, the disassembling and sorting is very sophisticated and very time-consuming and expensive due to this. So due to this is actually mainly used for the production waste from the manufacturing of this cathode materials. So everywhere where you have a waste stream in the production, then you recycle it with this direct method. So at the moment, it's not an economic option for lithium battery recycling, just for the raw materials of it. The next one is a pyrometallurgical process. As the name says, pyro, it's a hot process. So you have a very simple preparation. You just get rid of the plastics around the batteries until you have the single cells. Then you just crush them and put them into a big oven. And I think this is the technology to be able to drive this oven in a way so that the recycling works after that. From this oven, you get a slag and a metal alloy. The metal alloy is containing cobalt, nickel, manganese. This can be easily recycled into battery materials. And then you have a slag, which is mainly composed of lithium and aluminum. And if you look at the lithium side, then we need to leach this slag or dissolute the lithium out of this slag, which is done by acids. And then afterwards we have the lithium in solution, can precipitate this to lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide and produce the regenerated active material. So this process has a simple pre-treatment. It also can be applied to all types of lithium-ion battery. And what is really nice, it doesn't distinguish between the different types. So you can probably mix up different types of batteries for this kind of recycling. It is a process which is most efficient for cobalt. As I said, cobalt is the main issue actually in batteries. So the industry, when they started recycling, they were focusing on cobalt. And due to this, the application for lithium recycled is limited because you have losses. On the oven process, the lithium is not just in the slag, it's also in the off-gas, it's also somehow in the metal alloys. So it's not 100% recovery you can achieve here because you have losses in the process. And of course, besides this material losses, you generate toxic exhaust gases and you have a large energy consumption for this kind of process. Yes, and last but not least is the hydromet process. Again, here we start with a challenging disassembling. However, as soon as we have our material, it doesn't need to be as pure as for the direct recycling. We can leach it also with acids, so it's similar to the pyro process. we have it in solution, we can precipitate the material and produce regenerated active material. It is also applicable for all types of lithium-ion batteries, however, not at the same time. So you need to distinguish between the different types. We have a really high recycling efficiency also for lithium, and it was developed for cobalt. However, it is applicable to recycle lithium at a battery grade. So not just for ceramic industry, but also for reuse in the battery industry. And as I said, disassembling and sorting is again very sophisticated. These three processes are the state of the art at the moment and are used in industry at the moment. So we already recycle batteries, not just rechargeables, but also the old ones from cars with lead and sulfuric acid inside and so on. This is done. And we have recycling facilities doing this. And the biggest share is between hydrometallurgy and pyrometallurgy processes. And they are somehow one-to-one, some more, some less, depending on what country you're looking at. So this is what we already do. And now, during the last years, since 2020, when lithium was determined as a critical raw material for Europe and for our industry, we tried to optimize the processes with regard to lithium. So the optimized process, which is at the moment applied and at a stage where it's not in industry scale, however, already in pilot scale. So the companies are testing it in a bigger scale, but it's not just industry scale. And this process is a combination of pyro and hydrometallurgical processes and focuses mainly on lithium. So you have an easy preparation because at the first end you have a pyro process. However, this pyro process is called pyrolysis. It's not as high as high temperatures as in the other process. So you're around 500 to 600 degrees Celsius, and under vacuum, so you don't have an off-gas. So you can specifically treat your off-gas. Of course, you're producing gases. Then you don't have an acid leach, but a water leach, because during this pyrolysis, you convert the lithium into a salt, which is easily water leachable. And from this, because you have a very selective leaching, you have a very selective precipitation and a high-quality lithium you can achieve with this process. And after this water leaching, you have your black mass. It's called black mass, the powders which compose of battery stuff, which can also be recycled in a different stream. So for cobalt, manganese, nickels, and so on. So this is actually what is done now, what is the actual research at the moment, and also the projects I'm working in apply more or less this stream. Of course, you have some optimization potential in every step, and every company is doing it a little bit different, but it's showing that. And as I said, the industry is now focusing on lithium, and this is because of the Green Deal and the battery recycling policy of the EU. So at the moment, I think you can't read it, I have to read it out what it's in here. So it's a proposal for regulation of a European Parliament and the Council concerning batteries and waste batteries. So this is actually where all the recyclers are frightened of, because they found out what this proposal says and they were like, oh my God, we have to do something. And they are doing it, and this is quite fair. And in this proposal, the EU has a lot of regulations to standardize batteries and technologies and the design of batteries, and also the collection, what I previously told you, so the collection of batteries to put it into a recycling stream. So a lot of articles about that. And I put you some snippets on the articles on battery recycling. So the first thing I think it's really nice, they say they should not be landfilled anymore. So we want to recycle all of our batteries. That's what the EU stated, and which is quite nice. And in the following article, they are going a bit more in detail. So all waste batteries shall be collected and enter a recycling process, which is also really good. And now the recycler come into play and have to reach specific percentage on the recycling process. And they are given in the appendix. And this year, by the end of this year, probably the Commission will update the paper on the updates in the industry and how they catch up with this. And yes, and if we look at the regulations the recycler has to catch up with, we come to these numbers, the magic numbers of this paper, and or the industry, at least in Germany, is talking about these numbers. So the first is the collecting. Already in this year, 2023, they want to have the collection of up to 45% of the batteries, which is good, and I think we are somewhere there. In the next years, they want to catch up, and yeah, the magical number is 70%. So by 2030, they want to have 70% of the batteries collected and put into a recycling stream. And I think if we can do 70%, we can only easily increase then, because then we have all the infrastructure available for that. So there is still, I think we are able to catch up with a higher percentage even after that time. And then it comes to recycling itself. So there's, this is a bit hard to understand. First of all, they determined the recycling efficiency of the average weight of a lithium-based battery, which means the percentage of a battery, mass percent of a battery which needs to be recycled. This year, no regulations, but they are coming, and again, the 70%, the magic number. So 70% of the whole weight of a battery should be recycled. Means not just lithium, but everything else. The whole stainless steel, the aluminum, the foils, the graphite, everything. I just looked at lithium for this chart. And of course, then we have a regulation for lithium. At the moment, no recycling quote. In the 2 years, they want 35%, and then again the magic number 70% by 2030. And actually, if we look into the industry and into the processes, the optimized processes I just show you, we are there. So we can recycle 70%, demonstrated in pilot plants. It's not industry, but already pilot plants. So this is, we can do that, and the industry is very confident to do that, and they had a lot of effort on it, and it's not just because the EU told them, because it is because of the supply risk. So they are not just doing it because they are good people. And yes, one drawback is given on the right side. So first of all, it's a proposal, it's the EU, it takes time. So it still needs to be regulated into national law. It's not done yet. But as I said, the countries are working on it already, the companies are working on it, because they are afraid when it gets to law, then they have to achieve these numbers. Another drawback, unfortunately, is they don't determine the location of the recycling. Actually, we could collect our batteries, ship them to China and let them recycle them. And this is not good. However, they combined all these regulations with a CO2 footprint. So probably shipping to China would be too expensive and higher CO2. But it could be that we recycle outside of Europe. But if we have a look at the current status and what companies are involved in recycling, then we see probably we will do it in Europe. We see the big car players, so VW, Volvo, the French market, automotive industry, as I said, they are not good people. They just have a supply risk, and because of this, they are looking into lithium recycling very much. They also look at lithium mining on the other side. So they are involved in mining industry as well, because they need a supply for their battery production. The other players as well, chemical players, Aramet is a big producer of lithium, battery, Bosch, and so on. So they are really big names on that chart. not just automotive, also mining, recycling. So really big companies are involved. They form associations on that topic, and they have a look at the research centers in universities. So there's a lot of EU funding on these topics, on lithium recycling of critical raw materials. And especially University in Freiberg and here Helmholtz Institute, they are looking at this, and we as a company are also involved in these topics. So there's a lot of funding and research going on into battery recycling. So this is, I think, good news. As I said, I think we already catched up with the numbers the EU gave us. However, with this industry, they are not good people. They just do what they need to do. So if the EU says 70%, they won't do more. That's the pity. They could, but probably they won't. If you're interested in the current status a bit more, there is a really nice blog from Fraunhofer Institute, and it's from actually 1 month ago. And they were looking at the battery recycling in Europe and what capacities are developing, and what is the demand analysis, and what are the market players. So this is really nice and a really good summary of what is going on at the moment. And from this, I got this chart. Oh, you. Okay, on my computer it's quite nice. So this is Europe. Actually, this is Germany. So we have quite a lot of recycling in Germany. This is Great Britain. This is Paris, just to get you in regulation. Yeah, and of course Scandinavia and so on. And this is Barcelona, basically. So these are the current projects for battery recycling. Either they are planned, or the green ones, which are already established this year and will get into production. We as a company are involved in some of these projects in Germany as well. So we are building these plants. And I was also looking at the technologies and dealing with the black mass. And yes, so since this chart is not so good, maybe this gives an overview on that as well. This is the battery recycling companies in Europe and where they come from. So some of them come from Asia, some of them come from America. However, the biggest share are European countries or companies which are involved in recycling. And as I said, at the moment there's a lot of going on in Germany with this regard, so we have a biggest portion at the moment. However, the other countries are catching up. So as I said, it's all from this blog from Fraunhofer, and it's really nicely giving you an update of the actual situation just 1 month ago. Yes, and so I'm now coming to the end of my talk. If we look at why is it the whole thing? Better. In the future trends, I looked at this from different perspectives. I try to do that. So it's no reference on that. I just put some ideas on the future trends together for you. The first of all, what I said, recycling technology. We are catching up. We already have the 70%, and there are projects which are also achieving 90% of lithium recycling already. So I think we are on a good way with the technology. And if we optimize the technology in the next years, we will be able to recycle up to 90% of the lithium from the batteries, which is really good. The other thing which is also triggered by the EU is design thinking. So we need to optimize our battery design towards recycling. If the disassembling of a battery is so challenging, then maybe we should rethink the design of a battery and not just automation of the recycling. So this is a big issue, and this is a task for the industry, for the battery industry, to optimize their designs and to standardize their designs. Yes, and this is the other big issue. Of course, battery technology change. As I showed you already, so the cathode material changes. Meanwhile, we're talking about different other types of batteries, not just lithium-ion batteries. We're talking about solid-state batteries. We're talking about sodium batteries where lithium is replaced by sodium, and we have a lot of sodium. So that's new technologies we need to catch up, and of course recycling technology needs to be needs to catch up with this. Regulations, which is I think most important, of course, we need the national law, we need the legal incorporation into this recycling issue, and I think now the EU needs to speed up to put it into national laws. So not just propose action, but also put it into laws. And this is a big issue. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this terminology, ESG and CSDDD. All in all, it means companies need to rethink their supply chain. ESG is more from the economic side. So most of the mining companies are stock companies. They get their money from the stock market. So, and if they say they are environmental, social, and involved, and they look at their supply chain and they dedicate themselves to make their processes as sustainable as possible, then the investment companies or people investing in these companies trust them more. They are then maybe on some financial products which are greener and so on. So this is something the companies are doing, mining companies as well. Really, really good thing. However, we need to take care that it's not just a green stamp. So we really need to control this is working. And the other thing is the law. So it's European Commission which proposed a corporate sustainability due diligence detective. And this actually just means companies need to be aware of their supply chain and need to have a look at it, that it has social compliance and environmental compliance. So we don't want kids to work in the mines. We don't want chemicals spilled all over there. This is, as I said, it's really nice as long as there is someone who's controlling it. I think this is the biggest issues, but this makes the whole industry at least a little bit greener. And yeah, all these things have an effect on the price. And as I said, raw materials are traded on stock markets, and as long as the prices increases for raw materials due to their supply risks, this makes recycling even more effective. So at the moment, recycling is very costly, and as long as the prices are rising, then it gets more and more efficient and also attractive for companies to be an economic process. So these are actually the future trends, and I think and I hope actually that they end up, and that the European Union is now speeding up with this. And so I'm coming to the end and the summary. I wanted to show you at first why we need lithium at the moment, how much we need, and what kind of form we need it. I also wanted to show you the technologies for the recycling. However, I think this is my opinion, I have to write it like this. From my point of view, as long as our consumption is as high as it is at the moment, we can't catch up with the demand without mining or with recycling alone. And this, on the other hand, means we have to achieve our climate, if we want to achieve our climate targets, we have to first of all be responsible with our resources. So why is our demand that high? We have to ask ourselves like this. And maybe we can reduce the demand. The other thing is, of course, we need effective recycling technologies. As I said, I think we are on a good way on that one. And at the moment, at least, maybe until 2040, 45, when we catch up with the peak, we need the most sustainable mining as possible. And this can only be achieved if the mining is locally in Europe, because then we are only able to control it and to determine the rules of mining. If we do it in China or in Africa, we can't determine how it is done from my point of view, and at the moment we are just not looking at it. Okay, So then, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So, are there any questions? Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
So much information.
Yes, I'm sorry for that. But yeah, it's a lot of things we have to look at.
Maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but I was wondering if you know what are the current rates of recycling of lithium. Is it possible to estimate like how much of the batteries at the moment, or how much of the maybe on the local level or the global level is being recycled?
That's this chart actually,
Okay.
and we are here. So at the moment there is no industrial recycling. For lithium at least. They do battery recycling, but they don't focus on lithium. Lithium is, due to the processes, the pyrometallurgical process and so on, lithium is everywhere. It's in every stream, and it's really hard to recycle from these processes. They are looking at it, they are optimizing it, and as I said, we are now catching up with it, but at the moment, in an industrial scale, we have no lithium recycling.
Yeah, and I was wondering if we are able to manage that 45% till 2025. Because when we are now on zero.
That's actually then where the next companies come in. So we are there. I just have this local view on Germany, but I know in the EU we have all these companies involved already there. They are building pilot scale plants this way around, which means it's not industry scale, but it's already automated. It's already planned in the way you would think of a plant. It's just a little bit smaller to prove the concept. So we are at a stage where we prove the concept for industry scale up. And companies like SMS Group, which is a big company which actually build plants for steel industry. They have a joint venture with Neo Metals, which is an Australian company, for example, which is involved in lithium mining in Australia. And they have a joint venture in building a plant, for example, in Bavaria. So, and they are building plants now. They have a concept, they have a technology, and they sell the technology to Mercedes, to other companies which would like to catch up with it. And for the automotive industry, it's most easily to recycle because they have a stream. They disassemble the cars and take out the batteries. So it's just logical that they do the recycling as well. And they are there. They try to do that. But as I said, at the moment, not in industry scale, but in pilot scale already. And this is just a proof of concept to scale up, to get the investors on side and show them, okay, it works. Look, give me money to scale up. All right. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful. And I want to ask you about the sustainable mining as much as possible. What do you mean by it? And is it even possible? Because I Google it, right?
Yeah.
Google,
and
it's not possible at all.
No, of course. Mining can't be sustainable. Okay, you take something and it's gone. So you can't recycle it in mine. What I mean is this is more from the sustainability of all other processes. So mining is not what it was or used to be here in this area. It's not dirty anymore. It's not dangerous anymore. It's high-tech industry. Meanwhile, we just don't know it because we didn't do it the last 30 years. But in Australia and Canada, they just do it. They have these big trucks available. They have these big technologies. They have the automated drilling machines and all that. So I used to go to these trade shows where you can see all of them. It's impressive. So it is much cleaner meanwhile. So the thing which is done underground, I think it's already quite fine. Of course, it can be sustainable. However, everything after that needs to be sustainable. So if we have these processing streams, we need to reduce our waste streams. We need to recycle our processes. And this is something we are looking at the moment, either because we want to get it economic, so we need to recycle to get our streams economic, and on the other side, of course, because of the environmental compliance. So that if you think of mining here in Germany, for example, I just told it before the talk that I was in another region for tin mining, and they have a very small footprint on the surface. They have everything underground. They do the processing underground. However, the big issue of it's not that the mine is dirty, but there are about 20 to 50 trucks going through the village every day. Of course, the public is not happy about it. So I think the main issue is their policy to get the infrastructure done. So of course the mines are not somewhere in the middle of Dresden. They are somewhere in the middle of nature. And we need to be more sustainable on that side, to get the transportation sustainable, to get all the processing steps afterwards sustainable. So of course mining itself can't be.
I have a question related to that and your very last comment.
Yes.
When you said that the sustainable way is kind of like mine in Europe, or I would say in the global north, where we can like check the conditions. But I was wondering, like, it's no secret that the mining companies operating in the global south with like the really bad conditions are actually from the global north. So they maybe should like meet the standards that are in the global north. Like it should be kind of like applied to, you know, like work somewhere else according to standards of the country you're coming from. And that could be maybe like easier to make them do this rather than open new mines in where we can kind of like control it.
It's both ways. I think the first step, of course, is that every time a European company is involved in mining outside of Europe, they need to apply their standards. Somehow this is a good version. So we have high standards for environment. However, if you go to Africa and tell them they should do it in your way, they won't do it, because they know from the colonial times and stuff like this, they won't listen to you. So it's another thing you have to do. You have to do education in this area. So the same thing we are doing here now, they have to catch up from their side of you as well, because they don't want a mine in their backyard either. So it's dirty there. So I think this is a responsibility we have globally. Of course, at the moment we have our supply from outside of Europe, and I think the first thing we can do is to be as sustainable as possible as a European company doing mining there. But the next steps is, of course, also look at our own resources and not just have a supply risk from the other countries. Because as soon as Africa catches up with the industry standards, they won't sell their stuff to us. So China at the moment is restricting all the raw materials for ship industry, because Taiwan Semiconductors is coming to Dresden. So it's a big issue. So we have a supply risk, and as long as you are not mine in our countries, you can't get over that.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question related to the graph that you showed about the prediction of how the use of lithium is going to rise over time.
Yeah.
And you said that in 2045, I think we expect to see like a plateau or some sort of
this one.
Thank you. Equalization or maybe a decrease. And I wonder maybe if you could just expand a little bit on that, why you think that is going to happen. Because, I mean, the way I think about it is that this economic system has to continue to grow, and there has to be some growth of GDP every year.
Yes.
And what do you think is going to cause the number of electric vehicles or the usage of lithium to go down or to...
So, first of all, these are not my numbers. It's from the International Energy Agency. And there are models for this kind of prediction. Of course, it's hard to look at this time scale, but I think what they considered is, first of all, the recycling, so that, and also we have experience about, scaling up of automotive industry. Of course, not for electric vehicles, but we know everyone can just drive one car by one time. So it is limited somehow, and I think it's coming from this. But to be true, I didn't have looked in that detail why they think it is like this. So it's an economic model on that. And as I said, you find a lot of graphs on with this shape, let's say. But at first, during the next 30 years, we probably have a scale up due to the growing market. Yeah.
Yes. If I can just follow up on that, I'm just trying to understand, because the way I think about it is that the number of cars keeps growing since, I mean, the invention of the car.
Yes.
So I was wondering why they think it's going to decrease. But if I can just follow up with a different question for you, I think you said that the 100% of recycling is only possible once it stabilizes. Is that correct? So if the number of batteries keeps growing, then it's impossible to reach 100% of recycling?
Now it was on the other side. I think here, if our demand is decreasing or stabilizing, then we are able to recycle all the lithium and don't need mining anymore. But only if the demand is stable, because we always only recycle what we done 10 years ago, or what we produced 10 years ago. And until now, due to the growing market, we can't catch up with the demand. So even if we try to get more sustainable and be careful with our resources, and maybe this graph flattens in the future, no one knows actually, no? But it is still rising in the next 30 years. And this is, I think everyone knows about that. And so until now we can't catch up with recycling, because we're recycling what we did 10 years ago.
So if the demand never equalizes, then it's never going to be possible to reach 100% of recycling.
Exactly. Of course you have efficiencies. You would never reach 100% recycling efficiency. However, we will probably catch up very close. And only if the demand, I think it's logic, of course. If the demand is stabilizing, then we can catch up with recycling.
Thank you.
One more. You also mentioned that the lithium from brines is preferred for the production of batteries.
Yes.
And here the case, like it will be from the hard rock.
Yeah.
The main argument is it will be used in the batteries for
Yes.
the cars. So what does it mean? Like you said, it's preferred. So I'm not sure like, whether it's possible.
Yeah.
Or
It's the current status, let's say, because if you think about lithium extraction from brines, it's easier because it's already in solution. So you're always going, at least I'm as a hydrometallurgist, I'm always trying to get something into solution and then separate it into its components and purify it. And in brines you have it in solution, so it's easier to get it separated and to a state where you can produce lithium. And for the battery industry, the standards of the lithium purity are very, very high. And so it's much easier for the companies dealing with the brines to produce this high purity. And if you have to dissolve an ore like the synwaldite, it's more aggressive chemicals you need to use. It's a lot of more impurities inside, of course. From a salt lake, you just have other salts inside. Here now you get other heavy metals inside. You get a lot of silicon inside and stuff like this. So you have a more unpure starting point. And so you need more effort to purify it to a battery grade. So at the moment, the brines are used mainly for battery production. However, of course, we can do it from hard rock as well. So it is used. If you think of it, then the processes are available to produce high purity lithium carbonate or hydroxide from batteries or for batteries. However, it's more effort on that.
But would it be then like, I don't know, feasible to do this with the lithium from Zimbabwe, in case like even like from the economic perspective, if there is like a better quality and cheaper and less I don't know, ways, consequences, lithium coming from the brines still available? They really
the main reason is probably really the supply risk. So we are not producing it at the moment, but we are building battery capacities in Europe. We are building big converters in Europe to process the lithium, to have our own domestic supply for the industry. And because of this, it's just the logical consequence that you also extract the lithium in Europe. I know it's that's the reason why it takes so long here, because it's not economic at the moment. So they always have to wait for the prices of lithium to be very high to get more investors to open the mine and to get the equipment on site and stuff like this. That's probably, beside policy and regulations, one of the reasons why they don't really get started.
Can I ask, it's not the question of recycling, but it's more a question of the policy of the companies. That maybe because you come in contact with them, that's why I want to ask, is a part of their strategy not only to invest in the recycling, but also to change the strategy of the technology that is made to be old in 1 year or 2 years, like on purpose, because they want people to buy more and more. So I think like part of the strategy shouldn't be only to invest like in the recycling technology and stuff like that, but also to change this attitude to the technology. So I was curious if this like companies such as, I don't know, there was Motorola and others, if they are thinking about this as well, because this is a big, huge part of it, of the problem.
Well,
zastarávání, like the technology that is made
this is it is a big issue. I don't have this perspective actually. I can't say that much to that topic, but I also agree. So I think we need to learn how to reduce our demand. So we can. That's the only thing, and I think. From the battery side, we see that they try to change the technology to don't use cobalt anymore and so on. Obviously not because they are, as I said, good people. It's just because the supply risk is very high. So, economy has different rules.
I was thinking that it's more complex also.
Yes, definitely.
To see it in other relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Maybe if I can just add to that, because I read recently that there's some EU policy that is trying to regulate that as well. And just as they came up with the regulation that all the chargers have to be the same to reduce waste, there's also incoming regulation that the batteries in phones will need to be changeable, just like they used to be. So now all the new phones will have to be designed in the way where everyone can change their battery and not throw away the entire phone once the battery stops working. But of course that doesn't solve the issue that maybe the batteries don't last as long as they should, but at least you don't have to throw away the whole phone, which is again another waste of a lot of materials.
But I think that it's normal that you can change your battery in your phone.
Well, but you have to go somewhere and you have to pay for the service, right? The point is that you can do it yourself, just like you used to be able to open it, buy a battery and change it.
But on the other hand, I think it's not good for the technology itself, because when you are able to open really easy, you recently decrease all other parts, which are mainly or mostly even more perceivable, or I don't know how to say that you can destroy your device when you are. It got some reason that it's hard to open it, I think. Yeah, that's it. On the other hand, when you are able to just replace the battery, you can destroy your processor, blah blah blah, because it will be more dusty and so on. So I think you need to have balance. You know.
But you can still, you just said you can still open it, but
in some circumstances, like that need really good tools, and you do it in a clean area and so on. So, but yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's not.
There are really a lot of topics we have to discuss on that. It's as you said, it's really complex. It's a lot of things, so you can catch up with your standards in I think what you are doing, you know, being aware of all that. It's the first step, and it's really good, because if consumers are just still consuming and not taking care, of course, then the demand is still high. So this is, I think, one of the most important steps, to be aware of that, and to educate people and to try to reduce the demand.
Yeah, and you said that it depends on demand and which are our preferences. That if we want that every people have own individual car, that the demand will be really high. So
yes,
it depends on that.
Definitely, yeah. But that's. I mean, this is a big issue, for example, in Germany as well. So we are building motorways and motorways and motorways, but our trains are in bad conditions and so on. And this is something, it's a big issue, we're discussing it, but the lobbies are very big. And so it really needs the public to be involved and to say, hey, stop, I don't want to, I want to go by train. So that's, all these issues are very complex and all have an influence on this demand, of course. All right then.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And
then okay, so thank you. It was like a great part of the whole topic. So if there are no more questions, then we are going to have a little break now. At 12 we start with a short lecture by Klára Zeloušková about the methodology that will be important for the workshop in the afternoon. So it will be just a lecture, then we will have lunch, and then we will start with the workshop. Yeah, so it's 12 then, and there is a cookies, and we can have some tea, and hopefully coffee. So thank you very much.
yeah, thank you for having me.